1. I am the full-time night auditor at my property. I have a co-worker I'm very friendly with that works PM shifts, Kate. I almost always work with the same overnight housekeeper, Amy. I personally check this man in a little after 11 p.m. His name is Jack. Important note, this man has a very Western white name, but is visibly an Asian man. I heard absolutely no accent from him during the entire time we spoke in the evening. Another important note, I always ask during check-in if guests need information about parking, and Jack told me he took an airport shuttle here. I made him a cup of tea after check-in, and he talked our ears off. He said he just flew in and hasn't eaten in like 8 hours, and before I can offer him the microwavable dinners we have in our snack market, or suggest open-late restaurants, he picked up old food on dirty dishes in the dining room and started eating it. Mind you, the restaurant closes at 9 p.m., so this food has been sitting there for a minimum of 3 hours. Jack was also attempting to be Mr. Charming and failing horribly, so I just assumed he was a slovenly jerk that talks to women while they're at work because they can't risk being rude to him. I have brightly colored dyed hair that gradients from blue to green, that I get compliments on all the time. He asked how I got it done, and when I told him Amy did it for me, he said he would pay us and buy us lunch if we went alone to his house to dye his hair for him. We both declined. Eventually he leaves. Later, around 2:30 a.m., he comes back, with to-go boxes in hand, drunk. Not unusual guest behavior. I remake him a key because he lost his, and he asks me if I have a minute to answer some questions. I say yes. Mistake. He tells me he's from Okinawa, and his family is a very well-known clan that run onsen, bathhouses, alongside other illegal but ethical business practices. I ask him if it's like the Yakuza, and he said, similar. We know the Yakuza and work with them. He tells me he takes women, especially from hotels, to work on the onsen. And if I was interested, he will set up an interview in the morning with his clan. He tells me some definitely too good to be true stuff like ridiculously high wages, free travel, and how his family, clan, whatever, pays for housing and groceries for you and your whole family. He starts pretending he doesn't know English very well, saying things like, "How do you say in English?" and randomly throwing in Japanese, even though I had a full, almost 30-minute conversation with him earlier in the night with none of these language barrier problems and no accent. It was fucking weird and made me very uncomfortable. He talked for nearly 40 minutes, with almost no input from me whatsoever. He repeats several times that it's not a scam and that it's also not human trafficking. He also attempted several more times to get me alone with him, offering me to come with him to the parking garage or to his room alone for drinks or food. I declined, obviously. I didn't know if he was lying or an actual threat, but I was genuinely afraid, and I stupidly did not write his information into the MOD, because I didn't think anyone would believe me. I did text Kate about it, and she told me to be extra careful tonight. Amy and I did not want to go anywhere alone that wasn't behind a locked staff door. I figured, since he is due to check out at noon the next day, he will be out of our hair and this whole crazy thing would be a non-issue. Spoiler alert, I am a fool. The next night I come in, and the MOD PM shift wrote down, believed unrelated, that one of the decorative vases in the elevator lobby on a guest floor went missing. There was also a window screen in the alley behind the building, and someone must have accidentally pushed it out of their window somehow. Kate is telling me about Jack and how he had extended his reservation and was creeping her out, behaving strangely, and had bought $70 worth of miscellaneous snacks from our snack market and left a bunch of them at the front desk. He had also tried insisting she take gifts from him, bracelets, and that she had accepted one just to get him to stop and threw it away after he left. She suspected the window screen belonged to Jack's room. 622 is a very high up room. I'm surprised the screen frame didn't break falling that far. Partway through my shift around midnight, I got a call from a deputy from the next county asking if we have a Jack staying with us. They also gave his surname, possibly in room 622. I just about had a heart attack. I confirmed that we did and that he has been behaving very concerningly and has scared just about everyone on staff that he has spoken to, and told him some of the wild stuff Jack had been telling me the night before. The deputy said Jack was taken to the sheriff's office after someone called 911, deeply disturbed by behavior Jack had been displaying in a public park. He took him to the hospital for an evaluation and let me know that if they release him, he'll be bringing Jack to our hotel, as he hasn't actually committed a crime. About an hour later, the deputy shows up in person with a bag of Jack's belongings and lets me know Jack is at the hospital, next county over. We had a full discussion where the deputy told me Jack had been reported missing from California by his parents 3 weeks prior, and he let Jack's parents know he was found, but he cannot force him to go anywhere he doesn't want to go. Jack also told the deputy that his young daughter is staying with us, and when I told him I'd only ever seen Jack, he said, "Yes, that's because his daughter is an adult that lives in Washington with her grandparents." I spoke with her on the phone. My hotel is in Oregon, for context. The deputy requested I bring the bag directly to Jack's room. I called Amy to accompany me, because I figured it would be smart to have a witness, and we both went up to 622. Well, the entire room was flipped upside down. Just about every piece of furniture other than the mattress were moved, upside down or covered with something. Both beds had effigies on them, with items arranged to have the shape of a human. On one bed, the missing elevator lobby vase was part of the effigy, as well as several IDs and passports that were not Jack's. On the other bed, he had meticulously taken the room's phone apart to make a human shape out of the pieces. There was a shrine with children's toys on it, made out of bedsheets and the TV, that he had removed from the wall-mounted frame it sat on, somehow. One of the nightstands was on his head, and the drawers were pulled out and stuffed with food and smeared ice cream. Everything was left open: the microwave, the fridge, the window, with the window screen missing, the AC panel, every drawer, door, panel, or openable fixture was opened or removed somehow. The floor was absolutely covered in various leaves, trash pieces, receipts, or objects in seemingly random patterns. The closet was emptied, and everything in the closet was placed in the bathroom, and the bathroom items were all in the closet. The desk chair was blocking the door. He had meticulously cut the "Do Not Disturb" sign to fit around the peephole of the front door, instead of just hanging it on the door. There were large branches in the immediate doorway. It was a fucking mess. I took photos with my phone, just in case, and Amy and I left the bag just inside the door and got out of there. I was hoping, since he'd been sent to the hospital, that I wouldn't see him again, but at 6 a.m. he came in. Initially, he was sheepish and quietly asked if someone had dropped a bag of his belongings off for him. I only said yes. He asked me to put them in your room for you, so I put it just inside the door. I did not mention anything but that. He got wide-eyed and then launched into a very confident demeanor and told me about how he was actually a fucking federal agent and the damage in his room was done by an untrustworthy and dangerous person, and that bad people were conspiring against him. But then started repeating that in his training he was told to let me know the building is safe. He said that the cop deputy I spoke to was a colleague, and that 1 county over the sheriff's office was assisting him in his investigation, and that the room would be spotless by the time he left. I just agreed politely, wished him well, and told him I had some other business to attend to, but if he needed anything, to let me know. I figured he'd check out that afternoon, and that would be the end of it. I got texts from Kate later in the day letting me know that the housekeeping manager wanted to see the photos I took of the room, as they were preparing for a disaster after reading my MOD report. But the room was spotless when they entered to see it. I texted her the photos, and showed several housekeeping and front desk staff at various points later in the week, and everyone was stunned at how bad it was, but how clean it was when he left. My next shift was blissfully Jack-free, and when I woke up to AM shift in the morning as I was leaving, he told me Jack was acting all kinds of crazy when he checked out, and at one point literally threw himself on the floor in shock that AM shift's name was a rather common name, and that was a movie character's name once. He also accused front desk staff of physically robbing him, which is obviously untrue. It was maybe 10 minutes before my shift was over when a deputy from the actual county I live in came in and asked if I knew Jack. I said yes, and the deputy told me that Jack is accusing us of stealing his car from the hotel parking garage, and if I knew anything about that. I pulled the deputy into the locked office to be out of earshot of Jack, and filled the deputy in on his insane story. He chuckled when I told him that Jack claimed to be a federal agent. He then said Jack asked him if we would let him rent another room, and said, "I'm assuming that's no way in hell." I asked the deputy to trespass Jack from the property. It took them over an hour talking to Jack, of which I was paid overtime for, before an officer came in to have me sign the final trespass paperwork, and the officer that gave it to me told me that Jack showed them where he'd parked his car, and there was a pillow in the parking space. As a last little tidbit, I had been relaying this bonkers story to a housekeeper who was out for a few days and missed the whole thing, when a co-worker told me that Kate had gotten several calls from Jack one day where he would only speak to her in code. He kept listing numbers and letters, getting frustrated and saying stuff like, "Code BF65281," and then hanging up. He had also come down to the front desk, written the code down on paper for her, and apparently wrote this code directly onto the desk. They had to get a magic eraser to get the pen off the desk. 2. As travel restrictions in my country remain in place, and 80% of our business pre-pandemic used to be international guests, staycation packages centered to domestic guests are the only thing keeping us afloat. Though I dare say domestic Karens can sometimes be even more entitled than international Karens, especially the ones with kids. Anyway, for this latest staycation package, we're offering a room and restaurant package, where staying one night gets you a free meal in our buffet restaurant. Needless to say, this package was immensely popular, and we even had to allocate extra tables in our coffee shop, located between the front desk, reception, and buffet restaurant, just to meet demand. When the main dining room was full, we then had to allocate these coffee shop tables to those who booked late. Now, many of these last-minute guests were reasonable and accepted the consequences of their booking so close to their check-in date. Though for every 10 reasonable guests, there were always 1 or 2 Karens moaning about why they couldn't be seated in the main dining area. And so, for the past month, we've managed to tame these Karens, either by offering to put them in the waiting list so they may be moved back, subject to availability, or offering to cancel their booking with a refund, which usually shuts them up. Though there was this Karen that takes the cake. The victim is my reservations colleague Wendy. For the Karen, let's call her last-minute Karen. As with usual, Wendy was taking this call from last-minute Karen sometime during last week, who wished to book a room for 2 days later. Wendy kindly explained that her buffet restaurant was fully booked, and offered to seat her in the coffee shop area. Last-minute Karen went apeshit and started accusing Wendy of being rude and unkind to her. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Saying that Wendy was treating her like a second-class guest. Well, it's your goddamn fault for booking so late, or you wouldn't need to have been seated at our McDonald's seating, as so you described. Last-minute Karen then demanded to speak with our manager, which Wendy kindly connected to. After our manager basically said the same stuff as Wendy about her table situation, last-minute Karen still insisted on being seated in the main dining area. Her manager said it couldn't be possible and offered to move last-minute Karen's booking to a later date or cancel the booking. Last-minute Karen then says, "Forget it, cancel the fucking booking," and before angrily hanging up says we won't be hearing the end of this. A while later we got a call from the front desk, asking if we know this woman, last-minute Karen, as they just got bollocked over the phone by this bitch about the same situation. Yet a while later, the buffet restaurant manager called us, saying who the hell was this last-minute Karen bitch, calling and abusing his staff. And a little while later, the sales manager came over asking, "Hey, you guys know who this..." Before she could finish, we all replied in unison, "Last-minute Karen, right?" Wow, this self-entitled bitch was really hell-bent on getting Wendy and our manager fired, wasn't she? Though after that, last-minute Karen must have gotten tired, as her attempt to call everyone in the hotel seems to have ended. And then a few days later, we noticed last-minute Karen left a nasty 1-star review on TripAdvisor, to which I'll quote verbatim, with her crap grammar intact, with critical details redacted. "My day was as gloomy as today's weather." You might as well just say disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined. "I am very disappointed about the staycation reservation. A total ignorance of the client experience. You have ruined my holiday.
A mistake made when booking thought your system up to bear by your customer at the end. I have mentioned the reason for not choosing to sit in the coffee shop area because they simply unable to get us satisfied. And you all refuse to get me a counter offer but a cancellation. By a very dissatisfied return customer. Last minute Karen.
Just as well our GM was understanding, as we've already notified him about this particular Karen, and so he replied to a review with a standard corporate apology. Though we would have preferred if our hotel has a more firm blacklist system with such unruly behavior. 3. Slime Night Audit. Calliope, not a real name, clearly, is AM and assistant sales manager and effectively front desk manager and housekeeping too. Woman needs a fat raise. Anyway, so Calliope came in early one morning last week, like 5 a.m. early. The gods must have been smiling on me that morning because I would have totally lost my shit if she hadn't been there. At about 5:45 we got a call from the 3rd floor about a kid running around the hall, yelling and making noise and stuff. Calliope goes upstairs, wrangles this little bastard down to the 1st floor and into the office. He's about 4-ish. I hate children, what the hell do I know? And absolutely out of control, bouncing off the walls, grabby as hell, pulling on every door handle. He made a few attempts at body slamming the GM's office door. It was locked. Random shouts. It's 6 in the morning, and I'm off in an hour. Calliope gets Thomas the Tank Twit on her phone, and suddenly we figured out what his mother must do to get him to settle down for 2-minute stretches. We start scouring the room list for ones with kids, focusing on the 3rd floor, but Calliope had caught up to him punching numbers in the elevator, so he could have been from anywhere. As people start coming downstairs, I'm eliminating them from the contenders. You aren't missing a kid, are you? Because we have a spare. Every few minutes we have to round him up and sit him down again, and I'm just praying her phone battery doesn't die. 7 rolls around, and I told her there's no way I'm abandoning her to fate before this gets resolved somehow. So I'm still doing front desk while she's trying to set up the housekeeping schedule and keep the tweaker in training entertained and quiet and, for fuck's sake, in one damn place. At one point, she ran over to breakfast and got him some juice and Fruit Loops. Sugar, really? You think that's a good idea? I said, but I think she was too distracted to hear me. We were able to get out of him that his mother's name was Mommy, and his name was something we couldn't quite make out. We figured he was autistic. 20 years ago, he would have been ADHD, and 50 years ago, when I was his age, he would have been in need of a good swat in the ass, but I digress. At 7:45, we start calling rooms that we know have kids in them. But as we all know, 2 adults can mean 3 adults and 4 toddlers, so it's a long shot. The one we think he's from doesn't answer. 8 a.m. rolls around. And we've had it. We've been watching. Okay, I'll be brutally honest. I've been watching Calliope watching what is essentially a wound-up Jack Russell Terrier with opposable thumbs for over 2 hours now. Calliope is an absolute saint. But she's done. She calls the cops. Our local PD is pretty good, and we have a good relationship with them. They show up in a few minutes, literally 2 minutes after they arrive, and we've explained this situation. Here comes Mom of the Year with what seemed like an oft-repeated sigh of exasperation, saying, "He's mine." She's got a teenage son with her too, who has the weirdest attitude. A combination of defeatism, entitlement, and I just don't give 2 shits anymore. I hit that time clock faster than a Karen can say, "Get me your manager," and I'm out. Oh, but it's not over. I found out later that Mother of the Year was still in her room at 11:30, and noon. We had to threaten her with charging her for another night before she roped in her demon spawn from precious little angel. Got I wish I was a foster kid boy in tow and left. Later I told Calliope people like this are the reason Jesus Christ changed his middle name to fucking. Fun times at front desk. Oh, and the kicker? We were all crazy distracted and frazzled that morning. At 10 a.m., I'm sitting at home in my underwear with beer and Cheetos playing 7 Days to Die when my phone goes off. It's Calliope. Do you have the keys? 4. I'll start by saying I work in a small hotel. with a whole 28 guest rooms, and it's the 5-star hotel in town. So if people want to specifically stay here during a busy period, they must reserve a room, as we usually sell out by 6 p.m. We just went through a crazy busy spurt. Even our sister hotel was filling up with all our turnaways. We usually have groups that will stay for local events, and one such group had booked 8 rooms with arrival dates ranging from Thursday to Saturday. All dates which are completely booked. 9 p.m. Thursday night, all my arrivals have checked in, and I'm not expecting anyone. And a man walks in, doesn't say anything, just yells his last name at me, and spells it to make sure I heard. I tell him, "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't have a reservation for you tonight, and we're full, but I can see if our sister hotel has a vacancy for you." He didn't believe me, yelled and spelled his name for me like 3 more times. I repeat, "We're full, sister hotel, blah blah blah." He calls his boss and says he's going to fix this. His boss argues with me on the phone that he's supposed to have a reservation, and I repeat myself once again, even going into my emails to see, yep, he was sent the confirmation. Turns out this guy isn't the boss, he's the new coordinator for this specific group, and he's the one in charge of their hotel rooms. He doesn't like my apologies and solution, so he comes directly into the hotel, proceeds to yell and scream at me about how much I'm an idiot and I'm wrong. There was literally nothing I could have told this guy to make him understand the situation, if he had even let me talk. I couldn't get a syllable of an apology out before he would cut me off, yelling and screaming. Eventually he storms off, saying he'll be in touch with management. I immediately called my front desk manager and tell her what happened, and I'm legit in tears at this point, partially from PTSD from abusive men, and I explained to my manager that even if I could have talked, he wasn't accepting any solutions I gave him. She says, "Don't worry, I'll deal with this guy in GM." Now, according to my manager in GM, I argued with the guy. I was wrong, and I should have made the guy happy. But there's nothing I could have done to make him happy. They legit said 2 conflicting statements in the same sentence, and they tell me the customer is always right. From dealing with him, they know this guy is an asshole, and they still didn't care about my side of the story. Now I have to take customer service skill training, which I'm fine with. I'm always down to learn more, as you can never know everything. But what gets me is even after assaulting me, the guy is told, "I'm sorry, you're right, she's awful at what she does and she will be retrained." They might as well have said, "Please come on back and assault more of our employees, and we'll just apologize to you, maybe even give you some free shit." I've been here for 3 years, and this makes me wonder how much longer I do really want to be here. I love what I do, but I have 0 backup from management. I'm starting to hate the company I work for, and I'm starting to dislike the managers I work for. I feel like after working so hard to prove myself, I still mean nothing to the company and my managers. On top of letting customers abuse me and blaming me for it, I have never gotten a single raise in 3 years. Maybe I just need to vent to people that understand. But am I right to be mad at management for that? Was I in the wrong at all? And what could I have done better, if anything? And should I just quit when the time comes, or should I try talking to the managers? 5. I am a business traveler, not a front desk assistant. I had a good friend that had an unusual incident with incidental charges I thought you might chuckle at. We owned a large towing and recovering company and belonged to several national associations. We always looked forward to the association conventions. We got to travel and relax, and most important, catch up with old friends. Getting together with our friends from around the country was the best part. Most of these people had been my friends since the late 70s or early 80s. The favorite meeting place of the groups was always the lobby bar. Our conventions always brought in 300 to 400 plus members, so we had them at larger convention destinations, and a lobby bar was a must-have. One convention in Minneapolis, we all met, as usual, at the bar after we checked in. We had some big drinkers in the group, and there were some outrageous bar tabs. We took up most of the hotel and all the lobby bar. There were hours of backslapping and joke-telling and hugs and handshakes and lots of drinking. I think the first person to the bar was there at 4 or 5 p.m., and we closed the bar down near midnight. The first person to get to the bar that night was a friend from Memphis. She went to the bar, ordered a drink, and gave her room number. Then she mingled with us as we arrived. It was also common for members to come and go from the bar for dinner or catch a show, etc. Over the night, we probably had 85% of the members stop by and have at least one drink at the bar. I found out how much everyone drank when my friend from Memphis came to me Friday at breakfast and asked me what I was drinking that night. I don't drink, so I only had Diet Coke. The bar was not charging us for non-alcoholic drinks. My friend was frantic. What happened was that the bartender never closed her tab and never opened anyone else's. She was charged for the whole night's gathering, and her bar tab was over $5,000. The hotel asked her for a second credit card, and that's how she found out. She was going to anyone from the association and asking them to cover the drinks they had. Word got around, and at the board meeting we voted to cover her bar tab and tip. From that convention forward, we provided members with a hospitality suite, where the association covered an open bar and hors d'oeuvres, usually Thursday through Saturday. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Coahw, episode 73. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like and subscribe if you would care to see more. I mean, you can see more without doing either of those things, it just makes it a lot easier. Anyway, okay, it doesn't look like there's any birthday shoutouts today. I don't think there's any regular shoutouts either. No, there aren't. Okay, good. That means I can pass out quicker. So I'm going to get the video edited, uploaded. I'm coming to you from an hour in the past. Ooh. Time travel, spooky and stuff. Anyway, going to get the video uploaded, then I'm just going to die. I mean, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep. That's the thing I'm going to do. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.